Ilan Goldenberg is the director of the Middle East Security Program at the Center for a New American Security and a former State Department official. Ilan, thank you so much for being with us. One of my biggest takeaways was hearing Mr. Abbas say that he believes that under President Trump's leadership that there could be a historic peace treaty. What were some of your takeaways?
Sure. Well, the first thing is, what we're seeing is President Trump is, on this particular issue, he might be unusual and different and throwing things into chaos on other questions, but on the question of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, he is an incredibly conventional president. What we were expecting when he first came in, the possibility of moving the embassy to Jerusalem, talk of a settlement construction bonanza, none of that has materialized. Instead, what we've seen is a very normal approach. Engage with Prime Minister Netanyahu, build a strong relationship with him, invite Abbas to come to the White House. The speech that he gave today could have been given by Barack Obama, John Kerry, or Hillary Clinton. It just was not unusual. So I thought that's the most striking and interesting thing for me in all this.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were talking about that every president seems to come in thinking that they'll be able to get this deal done. They often meet and then they move on to things that they can get done, where this sometimes is at a stalemate. In a recent article I want to talk about, you wrote that it would be, quote, unwise and unlikely to work for President Trump to use this meeting to resume negotiations. Can you explain?
Sure. So the biggest worry I have, despite the good intentions, is that President Trump goes for the ultimate deal, as he calls it. And right now, the situation is not ripe for that. On the Israeli side, you have a far right-wing coalition that's not very open to negotiations. And on the Palestinian side, you have a president who's in the 12th year of his 4-year term and does not have a lot of strength or support on the ground. On top of the fact that both Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Abbas really are risk-averse individuals. They are not peacemakers. They are not people who are willing to take those big risks like Yitzhak Rabin or Anwar Sadat. I just haven't seen any of that in either of them. So for Trump now to try to restart a major process in a negotiation, I think would be a mistake and is most likely to lead to failure, the same types of failures we've seen for the last 25 years.
I want to ask you, Twitter is going crazy this afternoon with the line that President Trump said, saying that the peace deal, frankly, may not be as difficult as people have thought over the years. What do you make of that?
Well, I think he's coming in. And again, I actually, on this issue, you've seen other leaders come in and say that as well, including John Kerry, who I worked for. This is all something that seems totally doable. Everybody knows what the answer is. Everybody knows what the basic parameters of an agreement are. But everybody also runs into the same problem, which is these two parties don't trust each other at all, and have a long history of not being able to get this done. So, I don't think anything he said is all that unacceptable, and I think that his heart is in the right place on this issue. But I'm very skeptical that when he actually dives into it, he said before, who knew this was so hard? He said this about a bunch of different issues. He said it about healthcare. I have a feeling in 6 months he's going to be saying, who knew this was so hard about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict as well.
Yeah, I want to talk about back in February, the president did say that he's comfortable with a one-state solution. So in other words, no Palestinian state. That contradicted really decades of U.S. policy. Do we know if that's still his position at this point?
Yeah, well, I thought the people actually made a bigger deal of that than was necessary, because what he said was, one state, two state, it's all fine as long as it works for the parties. And so I think that's the key. And he emphasized that today. Again, today, he did not use the word two-state solution, which some people have pointed out as a mistake and a problem. But he kept talking about the parties have to come to an agreement. So the Palestinians are never going to agree to anything where 60% of the territory in the West Bank is annexed by Israel. So I don't think he was speaking off the cuff. He was making a point which I think is the right one. Whatever works for the parties should work for us. But in reality, the only thing that works for the parties will be a two-state solution. We
just showed a picture where the two leaders ended up shaking hands at the end of the meeting. It seemed like it was at least a nice meeting between the two. The president, though, as you pointed out a few minutes ago, has spoken about his very close relationship with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Can you maybe talk about and compare that relationship with the Palestinian leader and how they could move forward now?
Sure. Well, this is always one of the challenges for every American trying to negotiate between Israelis and Palestinians. We always have closer relationships with the Israelis because we deal with the Israelis on numerous issues. They're important for us on Iran. They're important for us on Syria. We have deep cultural ties, much deeper. For the Palestinians, we just see everything through the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. So, You know, at the end of the day, I think that the president's relationship does need to be stronger with the Israeli leader, because in any agreement, he needs to be able to convince the Israeli prime minister to go along. And then it's really Europe and a lot of the international community and the Arab states that need to convince the Palestinian leader to go along. And so, you know, this will be the same case here. But again, ultimately, you know, this coming to an agreement is not about Trump. It's about Netanyahu and Abbas. And that is where I think you run into major challenges and problems right now.
Yes, the challenges and problems we've seen in the past. Ilan Goldenberg, thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate your expertise.
Great to be here. Thank you.